welcome to the Catholic Forge, a conversational podcast where we gather to explore our Catholic faith and discuss how it forms our lives. All are welcome to join in this conversation and journey. Thank you for listening.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Catholic Forge. This is Eric in Missouri.
And this is John in Illinois.
And John, we have the express privilege and pleasure of being joined on this episode by none other than Alex, who is currently located in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Alex, welcome to the Catholic Forge.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We were just discussing the proto-genesis of how this came together, and and indeed we, in real life, I suppose, in real life terms, barely know each other, but we have some association through my friend, my sister-in-law, and your friend Emma, and she's my friend too.
She was my friend
I would
first.
hope so.
Don't get me started now, John. But you came over when we lived in Kentucky. You came over for a bit that day, and we just were kind of made friends, and then sort of stayed in touch off and on Facebook, and then you had these posts about some adventures. And I thought, oh my gosh, well, I want to hear about the adventures. And I have the privilege of being able to see them on Facebook, but I asked if you would come and share on the show, and here you are. So thank you for doing that.
Here I am. You're welcome.
Now we've already gotten too far, John. I'm sorry. I've taken away the thunder, but the thunder
we always
rolls.
need to ask our guests some special questions to help the audience get
boy.
used to them. Now, you were clever and have heard our question and know about the superhero question. So we're going to have to go in a different direction. Each person is afflicted with some type of syndrome when they're born. I'm a middle child, so I have middle child syndrome, and I can tell you all the reasons why that's the worst place in the family to be born. But first children and second children and only children all have a syndrome from the place in their family. So I want you to tell us, where are you in your family, and why is that the worst spot that a person could be?
I am the first. So I have the first child syndrome. And I think it's probably the worst place to be because you're pioneering everything. So mom and dad are a lot harsher on you than everyone that comes after you.
That is very true in our family, yes.
That was a great answer. How many siblings do you have? Did you say?
I have a younger brother. So he's 4.5 years younger than I am. So
Okay.
Yep.
And you feel he got it easier, you would say?
Most definitely.
And of course, the problem with 4.5 years younger is you really get to see the disparity. You probably weren't allowed to have a cell phone till you were like 18, and then he got it like when he was 10.
Correct. Well, maybe not in that level of disparity, but yes, that kind of difference.
Very good, very good. And if I can extend on some of the icebreaker business, would you share with us a bit some of your background and what it is you're doing in the Twin Cities now? Just kind of an overview of some of that.
Sure. So I am originally from Kentucky. I actually have a degree in biology and chemistry, which doesn't get used very often in what I do these days. So nowadays I work as the coordinator of discipleship and evangelization for a parish here in Golden Valley, which is one of the suburbs of the Twin Cities on the western side.
Sure.
And then I am also the associate music director for another parish in South Minneapolis. And then I do contract music and worship leading on the side as well. And so what brought me to the Twin Cities was doing missionary work. From 2013 to 2015, I worked for an organization called St. Paul's Outreach, and they do campus ministry. And so the campus that I was placed on was the U of M Twin Cities campus here in Minneapolis. And so then every time the door opened to leave, I would pray about, okay, Lord, am I supposed to move somewhere? And he said, nope, you're staying right here in the cold.
Wow, how terrifying. That's quite a change to go from Kentucky to the bitter cold. Holy cow.
I had a year in Northwest Indiana in between the two, so I slowly migrated north.
Okay.
I did the opposite of most people, which is to migrate south.
I think you have it, no offense to our Kentucky contingency, the 0.8 of you that listen, but I think you've got it better in the Twin Cities. Kentucky is wonderful, but to be there at the gateway to the true Norwegian Midwest, where you hear phrases like, "Shall we take the boat to the lake?" You know, and then bring some get some covered dish. You know, like, I mean, that's it. You know, in Kentucky, it's just all red state barbecue, bourbon, and racehorses. You know, it gets old. Anyway,
bourbon doesn't ever get old, but
fair enough. I must agree.
Where has this conversation gone?
So let's put a pin in the parish ministry, youth ministry stuff, because we want to come back around to that.
Yep.
Those 3 points of consideration, and you kind of hinted at it. One, you recently attended a somewhat well-known event called World Youth Day.
Yep.
In Panama, and then you also walked the
El Camino Santiago.
Yeah, to say you walked the way.
I did.
And this, of course, has come into another level of popularity or renown through movies and documentaries and stuff. And then, of course, like you had mentioned, your involvement in young adult ministry, parish ministry, especially kind of campus ministry. And so let's just go back to World Youth Day and explain what it is and how you got there and what it was like to be there in this environment.
Okay. So first off, World Youth Day is a gathering that takes place every 3 years. Nowadays, it takes place every 3 years. That changes. It can be located all over the world. So this year, It happened to be in Panama City, Panama. The one prior to that was in 2016 in Krakow, Poland. And then it was in Rio de Janeiro in 2013. But it was started by Pope St. John Paul II in the 80s, and was his vision to evangelize the young people of the world and to bring the young people of the world together to really encounter the universality of our church and the fact that we can be Catholic and love Jesus from anywhere in the world. So that's kind of the World Youth Day, what it is.
Sure.
And did you only attend the one in Panama, or have you been to them before?
I have only been to the one in Panama.
Only is not to make it diminutive.
Right,
That's an extraordinary feat in and of itself.
So I was trying to go to Krakow in 2016. That was actually when I walked the Camino de Santiago. But I can get back to that.
Sure, yeah.
Later.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've only been to Panama, that World Youth Day, which was just about 3 weeks ago now. So it was in late January, the 22nd to the 27th of January of this year. It was a kind of crazy adventure getting there. I found out on New Year's Day that I was going, so I had 19 days to get ready.
Oh my goodness.
For a 12-day trip to a foreign country, which was filled with going to see, what kind of vaccinations do I need? What kind of stuff do I need? Thankfully, I had done the Camino prior to this and had the gear to be able to go minimalist on a trip like that.
Sure.
But it was definitely a whirlwind. And then the experience itself was a whole crazy time. So we started off, so I went with a group of Latino young adults from here in the Twin Cities. We had 25 of us and then 2 priests that were traveling with us as well.
Wow.
So the 25 of us started off in the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport, flew down to Costa Rica, Liberia, Costa Rica, and then we took a bus to the center of Costa Rica, stayed there for a couple of days with some Carmelite sisters, and then took another bus to get to Panama City, which was supposed to be a 12-hour bus ride, turned into a 23-ish, somewhere around there, because of the border traffic.
Oh, sure.
And then finally got into Panama at 1:30 in the morning, and ended up getting settled in with host families, which was a beautiful experience just to be able to stay with families from the Panama City area and hear about life in Panama City from their perspective and just have a really unique and intimate way to encounter the culture of the city.
Yeah.
And then we had the World Youth Day events, which were crazy in a good way. The first night we had the welcoming ceremony with the Archbishop of Panama City, and it was just as we were in the field or it's not necessarily, it was a park that they had turned into like the field and stage for the event.
Sure. Yeah.
And so as we were getting situated in the park for the mass that night, it was just incredible to see over the course of several hours all these flags from around the world just start to pop up. And then so I was standing on top of a hill and I took a video kind of going around what we could see, and it was just a sea of people that you couldn't see the end of, with just like national flags up everywhere. And it was just this beautiful reality of how big our church is.
Yeah, that idea of Catholic and universal, really getting to see it.
Yeah. And then the next day we ended up doing the USCCB and Focus, which is another campus ministry organization here in the States, hosted an international festival called the Fiat Festival, where they had Bishop Robert Barron and Sister Bethany Madonna as keynote speakers, and just a really powerful night. Several of the young adults that I went with just had really intimate encounters with the Lord and some kind of radical breakthroughs in their own walk with Christ. Particularly one that I would love to just kind of highlight was the day before I had been talking to this young woman, and she was just expressing kind of the challenge that it is to be a Latino young adult in the United States, coming from parents that are immigrants, and really kind of feeling this tension of, well, I'm an American, but I don't really feel welcome in America, and I don't really feel like an American until I leave America. Because then I don't feel like I'm a Mexican either. And just kind of that identity struggle that is pretty prevalent in the Latino community here in the States. And after that night, we had the next morning we did a little, hey, what did everyone get out of, like, what did you take away from last night's festival? And she raised her hand and was just kind of sharing the same thing with the whole group. And then at the end, she said something that was just so beautiful. She said, I realized last night when Sister was talking that it doesn't matter whether I'm American or Mexican or anything else like that. What matters is that I am a daughter of God. And it was just one of those beautiful ministry moments where you're like, all right, this trip was worth it, if nothing else, than to hear those words come out of her mouth.
Yep.
So... and then the Pope arrived the next day, which turned into a crazy afternoon. Our whole group split up for going out to just get lunch wherever we wanted and kind of exploring the city. I ended up with the two priests, so it was just the three of us kind of wandering around. We tried to find the cathedral. The cathedral was closed at the time, and then we ended up in a different church just to take a holy hour. But then coming back, we finally got stuck in the quote-unquote World Youth Day traffic of standing for 45 minutes in thousands of people, just inching our way forward to get into the field where the papal welcome was taking place.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. In 90-degree heat. So
yeah, don't drink too much water. There's no bathroom nearby.
Right. But then if you don't drink too much water, then you're going to pass out from dehydration and heat exhaustion. So it was a catch-22.
Were you aware of any, kind of emergencies happening around you, or did things seem to kind of be okay, or?
No, as we were walking through, we saw a couple of young people that had gone down from heat exhaustion or dehydration, and the Red Cross trying to come through, the police. So it was like all these people, and then the medical vehicles were trying to get through, and they were just inching forward as people would part the Red Sea, so to speak, so that they could get down the road.
Yeah.
But it was one of those, yeah.
Excuse me, I remember, I think, John, we had talked about it at some point on the show, about like there was some statistic regarding World Youth Day and like the effect it has on the host cities and all this kind of stuff. So I'm always fascinated. I guess we haven't gotten far enough away yet to really get statistics, but I was amazed even, for example, that in Rio de Janeiro, you know, they had the papal mass on the beach. And I just pulled up the pictures now to confirm. And anyone can go on Google, if you're familiar with that, World Youth Day Rio Mass, punch it in there and go to the images tab. And you're looking at, you know, hundreds of thousands of people with their backs to the ocean, and not a person apparently got swept out to sea, which is statistically impossible with that many people with their ankles in the water. But it's always amazing to hear stories about the effect that the gathering has on the host cities. I mean, John, I think that you had said like crime rates drop and all this. It's like when your parish starts doing 24-hour adoration and everything changes. You know, it's like that's what's happening in these mega cities across our world. So very interesting. But yeah, with the heat, you would think that, of course, some kid from Bismarck, North Dakota, doesn't know about who just left a blizzard, right? Who just left the Arctic vortex and then flies into Panama City.
Because it was at that same time.
Right.
I came home to the polar vortex.
Yeah. So, but for the most part, no big tragedies, no big violence or
just like
rioting
minor
or protests or okay. So you kind of got us right up to the papal mass, and there he was. Did you get to see Pope Francis?
I got to see him 4 days in a row, drive by.
Oh, so you were quite close to him.
At least when he was getting to the stage. I wasn't close to the stage, but yeah, got to see him drive by on his way up to the stage each day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
What was the feeling, or was there a feeling, or was it surreal?
There's a lot of energy. I think for me, so I had been able, when I was in Europe in 2016, I had been able to get to Rome and to go to a papal audience, and we were right on the edge of one of the seating squares in St. Peter's Square. So it wasn't my first time being really up close and personal with Pope Francis in that sense. So I think there was a little bit, for me personally, it was a little more relaxed. Like, I'm not really gonna have my hopes crushed if I don't get to see the Pope drive by, but it's like really neat to see him drive by in the Pope Mobile.
Sure.
Like,
yeah,
you can't deny that. One of the days we were pretty close to the rails for the papal route, and one of the girls that I was traveling with, the Pope goes by, and 5 minutes later she's like, I'm still shaking from seeing the Pope. So it's one of those experiences that there's just a lot of energy, especially when you have that many young people all gathered together. There's just like the chants coming out from Argentina on one side and then Costa Rica on the other, some Germans in front of you, and just the excitement and energy of the crowd is, you can't really describe it.
How beautiful.
Yeah, I was remembering of course, like it's always one of the highlights is to watch the benediction, right? You know, and also let me just give a shout out. Also hosted by the Knights of Columbus. So shout out to the Knights of Columbus. But I remember from Rio, I don't know if he was there this year or not, but Matt Maher, got to, how did this guy get the gig? But he gets to go out there by himself with his guitar and sing "Lord, I Need You" on his knees, and Pope Francis is like 9 feet away, and he's out there leading his song, looking at the monstrance, so moving, So it's wonderful to see that, and to imagine the level at which the Holy Spirit is moving in all these young people, to return that fire to the global church. It's just absolutely amazing. I know there's so much to say, but I do want to move on to a whole nother kind of experience. But real quick, if do you want to put a nail in anything for World Youth Day? Something you want us to know? Do you know where the next one's going to be?
It will be in Lisbon, Portugal.
Oh boy.
Which actually is a perfect lead in to the next thing
yes.
I wanted to talk about, because
sure. Let's hear it.
If you go to Lisbon, you can do the Camino along with it the next time around. So, because it's
now. So once again, please give an overview but the Camino terminates in Portugal, right?
No, it terminates in
It's in
Santiago, Spain, which is just north of
Oh,
Portugal.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it
of
begins
course,
there
okay.
at the Pyrenees in France.
Well,
At
that's
least
one
of the
route.
routes.
Yeah, so that's the French route, which is the one that I ended up walking in
Of course you
2016.
I like the American Express Camino Light LITE version, but well, as soon as you said the 500 miles, I was like, I think that's the whole thing. I'm sure she did it on her knees too. Yes.
No, not on my knees, but
Well, yeah. So please give us an overview and then tell us about that journey.
So the Camino is a pilgrimage route that was kind of pioneered in the 800s, was when it really became a consistent route for pilgrims to travel. It is going to Santiago de Compostela, Spain, which is where the body of St. James the Greater is said to be buried. So it's this pilgrimage route to one of the apostles' grave sites.
Sure.
There are, I think by the time we finished, on the day we finished, there were over 1,000 pilgrims that came into Santiago that same day. And that was just before peak season would have been picking up for pilgrims coming into Santiago.
So, what time of year was that approximately?
We got in mid-June to Santiago,
Okay.
so we started mid-May.
July is his feast day, isn't it? July 25th is
July
his
25th
feast day.
is his feast day, which is a lot of pilgrims try and get into
It's popping off, yeah.
to
Sure,
that because
sure.
it's just a big party
Sure. Oh,
for
yeah.
his feast day.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that's kind of the overview, I think, of the Camino.
Sure.
There are many different routes. So the most well-known and well-traveled one is the Camino Frances, which starts in the Pyrenees on the French side of the Pyrenees, and then day one you end up in Spain. But there are really any way that leads to Santiago would be considered a Camino. So people could start from Madrid, they could start from Lisbon, they could start from anywhere along the French route. I
Eric
ran
would
into
start
someone.
a block outside the city, away from the cathedral.
Yep. Well, you wouldn't be able
What'd
to
you
get
do-
your
what'd you do on your lunch
Compostela
break?
then, but I ran into, well, when I was walking, we ran into people that had started walking from Holland. They left their house and just started walking.
How incredible.
Yeah. So they were on like day 80 when I ran into them of walking.
That's preposterous. So you said there was a tie-in to Krakow.
Well,
And
yep.
was it just that you were going to like do them both kind of real close together?
Yep.
Or?
So the plan was, my friends and I that walked the Camino were planning to do the Camino and then go straight to World Youth Day after. But just with the timing of, I was working as a youth minister at the time, one of the other girls
Right.
was working as a youth minister, it was just impossible. So it was almost impossible to find the 6 weeks to leave that we left.
Yeah.
Divine
Yeah.
Providence allowed that to happen. So
Shout out. Yep. So obviously for Americans and John and I, we went back and forth on it. I mean, who knows when on the show, but we were discussing kind of the renown of the Camino or just how well known it is.
Mm-hmm.
And my thinking was, certainly after 2010, with The Way, starring Martin
movie,
Sheen
yeah.
and Emilio Estevez, at least that highlighted the idea and put it out in front of people. I've not seen the movie, but everyone who has seen it says it's wonderful.
it is.
And is a soft introduction. When you were there, was there any sense from the lore masters of the Camino, like, indeed, was it less popular and then has grown to be more popular recently, or historically speaking, has it kind of remained, at a comparable level of devotion, or however I'm trying to say that?
Yeah. I think there's always been a pretty high level of devotion, but I would say definitely since that movie came out, there's more and more people that now know about it, particularly from the United States, that
Right.
kind of, I would say that the thing that changed was it's become less of a spiritual journey and more of a, I don't have anything to do with my life, and like, I need to go on a life adventure, which in
Sure.
a sense is a spiritual journey, but it's not for the purpose of pilgrimage, which...
Yeah, it's been a continuous pilgrim route since 1812 when it began, but
Since
it
800,
almost
actually.
Yeah, that's what I meant. 812. But it dropped down like in the 80s. There were only like about several hundred registered people that did it, and in 2017 it was 300,000.
Wow.
So since the 80s, it has really picked up again, and there have been other periods of time. The Black Plague, the Protestant Reformation, all those caused big degradations in the numbers at time periods. But the medieval period was its biggest period, and now we're back into a period that is comparable to that.
Wow. So Alex, what was the intent of your Camino? What was the emphasis or the inspiration there? If you feel you can share.
Yeah, it started from more of that, like, it was something that I really wanted to do. And as we got closer to the trip, it became more of that spiritual journey, and realizing, okay, this is a pilgrimage. So what does that mean in terms of like how you prepare for it, and what am I walking for? Because one of the things I would say is that if you're going to walk 500 miles or so, you have to have a real dang good reason
Absolutely.
to wake up every day and just walk 15 miles a day.
How many shoes did you go through?
Just one. I had my boots and then my sandals. So I had a 36-liter backpack, and that was all I had for 6 weeks.
That's incredible.
So whatever I could carry on my back was what I took with me for the trip.
Wow.
But so it ended up turning into this beautiful intercessory journey for me, where I think about a month before we left for the trip, we hosted a prayer night where myself and several of the other girls who also happened to be musicians, we put together kind of a night of worship and just inviting people to join us on our pilgrimage through giving us prayer intentions that we could carry with us. I think we ended up carrying probably 500 intentions, some of which were like miraculous, like healings or things that were just pretty heavy. And it was when we got back that my best friend and I, who kind of started the trip together in the sense of it was going to be just the two of us, and then it turned into 7 of us. We got back, and she was like, my dad was talking to me, and he asked, well, did you feel the weight of those prayer intentions that you were carrying? And it was when she said that was like, oh, that's why it was so hard most of the time. Like, just being like, being aware of like, when you are carrying prayer intentions, there's a weight that comes with that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had one for each of the miles too. It's just so incredible. Did you get your scallops on the way, or?
I got mine before I left. So I connected with a local chapter of American Pilgrims on the Camino, I think is the name of the organization. And they did a shell ceremony. So the scallop shell is a symbol of the Camino, because it, just like the Camino has many ways that converge to the one point of Santiago, a scallop shell has the many veins that converge to the end of the shell. So along with that, and they're pretty prevalent in Galicia, Spain, that region of Spain. That's why they're consistently a pilgrimage identifier. So usually pilgrims would have one strapped onto their backpack in some way, which is kind of an immediate like, oh, yep, that's person walking the Camino.
Sure, yeah.
The huge backpack could do too, but yeah.
Right.
Were there any stories or experiences of, I mean, I'm sure there were. I don't even know why I have to even ask. Of course there were. But, like John said, people sort of knew, by your personage and the shell, what was going on. Were there moments that were exceptionally thrilling of people opening their homes to you, things that kind of took you by surprise, people making room for you, caring for you along this journey?
Yeah. So one thing in particular that stands out, just as you were asking that, was there was one day we were walking, and it's the summer in Spain, so it's fairly hot, and it's like middle of the day, and as we were walking, we ran into some locals that had lemonade or something on the side of the road, and were just handing out cups to the pilgrims as they walked. It was cold lemonade, and it was one of those moments where it's like, okay, part of my better judgment says don't take the liquid from the stranger that I don't know, but but it was just a beautiful hospitality moment of being able to witness the care and love that the locals have for the pilgrims. And I would say the locals are very protective of the pilgrims. So there was another day when we were walking, and we had started walking down the wrong road, and people were directing us back to where the path to get through the city, because we were in one of the bigger cities that we had to travel through. And just that sense of, wow, these people are really care. They really care, and they want to make sure that you get to your final destination safely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. If there was someone out there who's listening to us now, and they were thinking about this, they've seen the movie, or they saw your Facebook posts, they've seen their friends' Facebook posts, oh my gosh, they've watched all the Instagram stories you could possibly watch, and they said, oh, I really want to do this, or they really are beginning to feel the Spirit's little tug to do this, what advice would you give that person?
I think really the biggest piece of advice I could say is to go in with no expectations of what is going to happen on the trip, because part of the journey is being able to live in the moment of each day. So it's actually harder when you come in with just the expectations of I want to do this the whole time, and I need to have that, and because it really inhibits what God can show you in His way of providing for you, really, both materially and spiritually. On top of that, I would say just connect with people that have done it and get the just practical wisdom of how to do blister care and how to pack your backpack and
sure.
What kind of equipment do you need, even what's the necessities, because you're going to be carrying it all with you. So you want it to be as light as possible, just because it's physically grueling on especially your legs and knees.
Now, you were saying before, did you go with did you have any kind of organization, or did you just show up and go, or
we just showed up and went?
Wow.
So like I said, my best friend and I just said, all right, summer 2016, we're going to do this. We had said that in 2014. We said, all right, we're going to do this. And then as we got closer, we just, it was that I did a lot of research for many years leading up to the trip to figure out, okay, where do you start? How do you get there? What do you need to have? And all of that, so that as many of the practical things could be just kind of peace of mind out of the way when we finally came around to the trip.
Were there any times that you were on the trip where you were like, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of here?
Many.
Yeah.
How
did you persevere?
The girls that went with me their encouragement. I look back on the trip, and God was just working in the fact that out of the 7 of us, there was never a day that all 7 of us wanted to throw in the towel. So there was always somebody that was like, nope, we got this, ladies. We're going to keep walking, and we're going to go.
It's a good thing it wasn't just the 2 of you.
No, there were 7 of us that went. So it started
but originally it was just going to be the 2?
Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe God knew in advance that you would need, because that you're going to wake up one day and both of you are like, nope.
Yeah.
We were just in our little Bible study. We were just talking about Jesus recognizing not the faith or the need of the sick person, but the faith of the friends, and saying because of their faith, I'll do this for you.
Yep.
And so that's a wonderful testament to that testimony. I have 2 questions. One, now that you've done it once, would you be willing to lead a journey on the Camino with the Catholic Forge?
Yeah.
And we'll do it in 2030. So no rush. Okay, I got to train John 2, did you, you mentioned, you had the 36-liter backpack or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Did you take a guitar?
I did not. I ended up
Did someone else have
finding
an instrument?
guitars all over Spain, but
Sure.
and serenading fellow pilgrims along the way. But
Sure, yeah. I wonder. Of course, you can sing, but I wondered if you would, one of those collapsible guitars or something like that.
No, I actually, like, as I was preparing for the trip, the Lord made it very clear that I was supposed to take very little. So I didn't have a guitar. I didn't have a lot of the things that would have been a distraction from just some of the physical, like, oh my gosh, get me out of my head, get me out of the fact that my body hurts. So I had a watch on my wrist, and that was even the only electronic thing that I took. So I didn't have a phone. I didn't have. I know.
Not even a phone.
Gasp. In the millennial age, how could you not have a phone for 6 weeks of your life?
I mean, truly. Well, did you take a camera?
No.
Oh, see, for me, I have no problem with not being contacted. Shout out to Teddy Roosevelt, who, while he was in office, just went to Yosemite for a month. No one could get a hold of him. All right, there's your history. But that's not an issue. Just being able to capture it, would be what I would have missed the most. I don't know about you.
Well, my walking companions were capturing it, and I wanted to be able to really remember the trip
and be present to the moment when you're behind the
instead of
screen
behind a
taking
screen,
pictures. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
So yeah, there are definitely things that I'm like, wow, I wish I could remember exactly what that looked like, but I have
Of course.
I was able to experience it in the moment, which was more beautiful than having a picture to look at now.
Well, thank you, John. Do you have any last Camino questions before we get to our third point here, brother?
I know. I'm just so impressed. What an incredible story. I wish I had your courage to just kind of go and do it. It's it really is phenomenal. It's something I would love to do, but it's so terrifying. And to be able to do that and to stick with it through the rain and the heat and everything, it's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I really want to go, and John and I, we have talked about it also with Ben, and I know that Tori would want to do it. It would be wonderful if there was some way that we could get a group together to go. We have a mutual friend, a former pastor. I guess he's still our pastor, I guess, in Christ, but he leads groups there, although they typically do the more abridged versions.
I think it's only about 17 miles that they do.
Yeah. But he takes groups and they do it, and so it's that's the American Express version. Speaking of American Express, that was not a segue, but let's hear about your involvement with the young people. Yeah. We hear about them, and we have no idea what's going on. That's not true. John also is involved in this level of ministry, somewhat in his parish life, and at the very least, he has been extensively for much of his professional parish career. And I am as well, not in doing youth ministry, although I have occasionally, but simply in my contact with young adults, especially through marriage prep and the liturgical end of that. So, could you outline what you do and how it's going? And then we want to interrogate sort of what's going on there. Things that you're seeing, trends that you're seeing, things that we should be aware of, ways to pray for young people. How do we support our parishes in their ability to do youth ministry, young adult ministry? Just whatever you want. Go ahead, please. And thank you.
Well, so my current position actually doesn't have me working specifically with youth and young adults, but I've had previous jobs as a campus ministry missionary and then a youth minister for a couple of years after that. But my job now does have the umbrella of I oversee just about everything that could be part of parish life in terms of looking at it from the perspective of are we making disciples of our parishioners, and are we giving them the tools that they need to go out and evangelize?
Great.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I do. In terms of kind of the trends that I've seen recently in ministry in general is there's kind of this shift that's happening going from kind of the I would say the quote unquote old model of ministry and how ministry was run for a very long time with youth, which was like the youth group, and you did all the youth group of activities and moving more into this discipleship model where it's really more based on the relational ministry, which from my experience is really where the gospel can be proclaimed and proposed to people in a sense that they can hear it and respond to it. Because it's instead of saying, hey, let's get this giant group together and I'm going to just kind of talk at you for a night for like 40 minutes on some subject or anything like that. It's, all right, I'm going to come and walk next to you in whatever the heck you're walking in, and I'm going to just journey with you on this way towards Christ, which I think is probably, I mean, it's what we see in the Gospels. We see Jesus got into the lives of the apostles and walked with them. And so it really, I think if we're going to do ministry well, we need to model it after the one who ultimately started everything.
Absolutely. And this is I don't want to say the failure, but this is a spot where we as Catholics are really struggling with all of our ministries and in people, is that when we're not doing a discipleship model, when we're not walking with them, we're getting Catholics that come to Mass, they come in, they might say hello to a few people on the way in, they sit down, the whole Mass, they're really kind of on their own, then they say hello to a few people on the way out, and then that's it. There is no connection to a community, there's no connection of self to the larger body of Christ. And so without doing a discipleship model where we're entangled in one another's lives, we're missing a most dynamic part of the person. And so we're not feeding people. We're not calling each other to spiritual maturity and stuff like that. So it is definitely a movement that needs to happen, just not in youth and young adult ministry, but in the way that we do all church ministry. At least there needs to be an element of it. It's not that what's been done in the past is wrong. It just needs to be more holistic and include this portion, I think. So it's really exciting to hear that that's something that is being really encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
So mechanically, how do you implement this? If indeed it's a new model, then how is it fleshed out, or how are you trying to?
So for me particularly in the parish that I work for, it's really trying to find those key leaders that, because what you're trying to do is spiritual multiplication in a sense. So I'm trying to find the people that I can teach how to do and how to live the same way that I do as a disciple of Christ. And so I'm walking with them in this, like, okay, I've encountered this life of Christ, and I want you to come and join me in this life so that then you will be able to invite others into this life. So it's
Sure.
kind of this multiplication where it's like, instead of me having to minister to 500 people, I minister to, say, like 12 or something like that, and then each of them ministers to their own 12. So it's kind of this creating a teacher-student relationship or a mentor-discipleship, discipler-disciple relationship in those key relationships of parish life or ministry in whatever sense that looks like. And I think, John, you were spot on in that it needs to be infused into everything that we do in the church, whether that's marriage prep or youth, young adult ministry, adult faith formation, really just that small group mentality of, instead of trying to do all large group events, one of the models that I've seen kind of take off is Why Disciple, which was put together by the Augustine Institute, and it's on formed.com or .org.
Oh,
I think that's a .org.
all right.
But they really do this. It's in small groups where people can have those intimate relationships and those intimate conversations where they really get to know each other and can have those moments where they're able to just hash out, I really struggle with this concept of the doctrine of the Catholic Church and how that should be lived out. So it gives them a platform in which they can really dive in and dig into all the topics of the faith. So with Why Disciple, they've got a various video series that you can kind of pick and choose. Okay, so the group that I lead is really struggling with identity issues. So then you find the series in their videos that deals with being rooted in your identity as a daughter or son of God, and that's where you start. And then you kind of go with where the group is navigating. So it's more of a fluid model of ministry than like planning out the whole year.
A curriculum based,
yeah. Yep.
A stumbling spot for this is that I see I don't want to blame pastors, but this is a nerve-wracking thing because you're turning over leadership to people that do not have the formation that our clergy or deacons have. What has been some of the ways that you've seen successfully pitch to our clergy to kind of invite other people to share in their ministry in this that aren't necessarily formed in the same way they are? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I follow what you're saying. So I would say one of the things that I've seen pitched well is just the need we need to raise up lay leaders. There needs to be more of the lay leadership in the church. I mean, we can see that in all of the scandals that have come up, that people are beginning to not be able to trust the clerical leadership of the church, because of clericalism, the lay leadership has kind of gone to the wayside. It wasn't always that way, and so really calling on, because I think there's also this okay, well, if the parish priest is going to do everything, then I don't have any ownership in my own faith and growing in my faith. Whereas if I can put it on a parishioner to say, hey, can you lead a small group of people? I'll be with you to walk, and Father will be like, we'll do formation for those leaders. But really calling them into a place where they can't stay stagnant in their own faith because they're walking with other people. So I think that's kind of the avenue I've seen work really well, is that it's helping to raise up those leaders, but it's not just letting them go hog wild and have total control of the reins. It's all under the pastor's discretion and guidance. So it's really trying to multiply just the hands and feet that are laboring in the vineyard.
Right. And so for parishioners who are listening, folks who, don't work on the staff like us, and they're hearing these things and thinking, oh, sure, sounds great. How would you urge them to support these efforts in their parish? And if, God forbid, nothing is being done in their parish, what can be done to jumpstart? And feel free to plug Formed. Shout out to Formed. Which includes, of course, John's master, Dr. Scott Hahn.
Actually, let's take a second to just say what Formed is to make sure everyone's following us.
Sure.
Did you want to share from Augustine Institute? They've got an online database. They call it the Catholic YouTube, and it has a lot more than that too. Though it has all kinds of books and resources and spiritual devotions and lessons that are online for a nominal subscription. Many dioceses have subscribed to it and given it to our parishes. That's how the Rockford Diocese has done that. All of our parishes have a free subscription to it. So that anyone out there that's listening, it's a great resource.
It is. It's an excellent resource.
my pastor, he called them and told them what we were looking for, and they worked with him, and he got a subscription for the whole parish, for everyone in the parish to use.
How wonderful.
And I don't know how that's going. I don't know if he's watching the metadata or not. But you're right. It's the Catholic YouTube. It's the Catholic Netflix. I mean, just stuff for kids, apologetics, biblical theology, whatever. So anyway, Alex, what can parishioners do to encourage this kind of work in our parishes?
Yeah, so I think if your parish has something already up and running in this discipleship and kind of what I would consider more evangelistic nature of ministry, I would say offer to volunteer to be one of those leaders, to get in that group of people. because there's always a need for more people to get involved in those things. They can't get up and running unless they've got the manpower behind them to really get up and running. So that would be my encouragement if your parish already has something, is like figure out what that is and how can you help. And if you don't have a ministry like that already up and running, have a sit down with your pastor and just ask, like, what's the vision for your parish? Like where does he want things to go? And if the pastor's not easy to get a hold of, like I know a lot are because they're just so busy, find the faith formation director or the youth minister or whoever it is and just have that conversation with them and kind of say like, hey, have you heard about discipleship or anything like that? And do a little bit of research on your own. I know there's good resources on Formed, like what we were just saying, but there's also just a number of different books that you can read. Sherry Waddell is an author who's written a lot on discipleship. The main book that people would want to read from that is called Forming Intentional Disciples. And it goes through what are the stages in the spiritual life that discipleship looks like through someone's walk. And that's a good starting place, I think, to kind of get acquainted with what is discipleship even.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Well, I can't believe it. I'm looking at the clock. We've been talking for almost an hour. It does not feel like it, does it? John, do you have any final interrogations for our guest here? Questions or curiosities?
I think you should go on the Camino again and do prayer intentions for the parish's doing discipleship model and for the youth and for all of us doing ministry, that we might be able to do such exciting things as you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the question is, will you go do the Camino again for Eric and I? So
I hope to be able to do the Camino again at some point. Yeah. And
I would definitely do it for us, John, if we go and do it ourselves. Yeah.
I would definitely carry you all in prayer for sure.
Oh, thank you. Well, it has been a real treat, Alex. Thank you, and thank you for not just blocking me immediately on Facebook for
that's
asking
what I've done.
if.
That's just not Christian, so.
No, I don't know about that. But but it's been wonderful to hear about these things. World Youth Day, the Camino, young adult ministry, relational ministry, discipleship models. Thank you for your time. And let me see here. We have been doing this Bible study thing so much, John, I've lost my place. How do I end this thing? Oh, last question. Would you be willing, you don't have to say yes or no, you can say I'll get back to you. Would you be willing to come and be a guest on our little journey through the Gospels one week? Is that something you'd be open to?
Yeah, potentially. Depends on the timing,
we just talk about the Bible. It takes approximately this long to record 5 episodes, so we'll get in touch on that. For now, this has been the Catholic Forge. Thank you for listening. We'd like to close, as always, with a prayer and a blessing. And Alex, if you wouldn't mind sharing your benediction with us, we'd appreciate it.
Sure, that'd be great. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time to just come and talk about ministry, about our Catholic faith, about the many ways that you come and encounter us in our daily lives, particularly the encounter that pilgrimages can bring about. Lord, I ask that you bless each and every person listening to this podcast. I ask that you bless Eric and John as they continue doing your work and your ministry in the vineyard, particularly in the podcast ministry. And Mother Mary, I entrust the lives of everyone listening to you, as well as just this ministry, the Catholic Forge podcast, to your loving care. And we just pray for your intercession as we pray together. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen. And Alex, before we kick out to the outro here, where can the people find you?
Yeah.
And we mentioned some music.
Yep.
And I know you mentioned that you have some music plans ahead. You don't have to share those.
Yep.
But where can they reach you if they wanted to get in touch with you to talk about professional things or whatever? How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the easiest way to get a hold of me or figure out where exactly I'm doing music or anything around my music would be my website, which is just my name, so alexschindler.com, so AlexSchindler.com. That has ways to contact me, as well as links to social media and SoundCloud, where you can find some of my songs. So
outstanding. And if you have listened this far into the episode, if you can hang on for 45 more seconds, I'm going to rattle off that outro, and then we're going to have one of Alex's songs there for you to listen to. She graciously allowed us to share that with you. So stick around and listen, and you can get a taste of her music, and then head over to alexschindler.com for more. As always, thank you for listening to The Catholic Forge. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and will leave us a positive rating and review wherever you listen. Of course, how about 5 stars for Alex for walking those 500 miles for the Lord, okay? You can help out the show in a big way by sharing it with your friends and your family. Is there someone in your life who wants to do the World Youth Day, who wants to do the Camino? This is the episode for them. There's absolutely no question. As always, you can continue the conversation with us on Facebook and Twitter. Alex will be in the comment section waiting for you to ask questions. And to get a hold of us, you can reach us at thecatholicforge@gmail.com. For more information regarding the podcast, visit our website at www.thecatholicforge.com. And we especially thank our sojourning wives. John, they are journeying with us, aren't they? Or being drug along, whatever it is, for pilgriming with us and their continued support of this project. And thank you again, Alex, and thank you again very much for listening.
Was broken beyond repair, lost in the dark of night. Your hand reached out to me and pulled me into life. Love, it captivates me. Your love inebriates all my soul. I give my life to follow every way you lead me. I will go. I'm yours. My love speaks to me. The winter's past and gone. My seal is on your heart. Arise, beloved, come. Love, it captivates me. Your love inebriates oh my soul. I give my life to follow everywhere you lead me. I will go. I'm yours. I'm yours forevermore. I'm yours. I'm yours. I'm yours forevermore. And my beloved is mine, and I am his. A lily in the garden, with nectar on my